Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Leaders Series Roundtable, GCS Leaders Series. We are 5 years into the Leaders Series. We have done nearly 100 episodes. And when I was reviewing, I thought how many interesting people we've spoken to on the Leaders Series. And wouldn't it be great to get some of the best people together on some roundtables to really talk about certain subjects. And that is what we have done. I'm really, really pleased to have 4 AI experts together, AI leaders in our network, who over the next hour or so are really going to put apart where AI is, where it's come from in terms of artificial intelligence, and where maybe it's going to go in the future, and how that's going to help business, but also how it may change and amend society. So we've got Mona, Rick, Adrian, and Rob. Thanks for joining me today, guys. Maybe Mona, you can lead us off.
Hi, I'm Mona Ashok. I'm an academic at Henry Business School. My passion about AI goes a long way back. I come from the industry. I'm a chartered accountant by training, and I spent 20 years as an accountant and then working for the top 5 global tech companies. I've had the pleasure of working in different parts of the world. So I look at digital technology, AI, not only from the perspective of what professionals are facing in terms of integrating them in organization, but also as an academic. And I have strong roots in understanding the ethical considerations of AI. Would love to speak to anybody who's interested in the ethics, the governance, the how organizations adopt AI. Except for South Americas and Antarctica, those are the 2 continents I've not actually had the pleasure of working. So if you are suddenly having an urge to work with penguins in Antarctica, I also bring in a free research assistant, my 17-year-old. So that's me, a mum and a passionate academic and a practitioner.
Thanks very much, Mona. Rick?
Hi, I'm Rick Behrens. I run, or I've actually founded a company called Landboss AI. It was founded based on the concept of safe AI adoption, where I could see that through a security history. I've been in corporate security for many years, cybersecurity, 15 years or thereabouts. And I could see AI going horribly wrong. The use of AI was very scattered, very out of control. And I formed Landboss AI based on that basic issue. I've been writing tools to assist with this and have an AI proxy service, which is due for release in the early new year, which basically allows people to use AI in a safe and controlled manner in an enterprise situation. Our remit allows us to actually help people to train on AI as well through the same platform, and to assist in monitoring and ensuring that corporate secrets are not lost through exfiltration through AI. And that's about me.
Hello, I'm Adrian Smith. I lead a small startup called Ripple, and Ripple deploys AI agents in an operational context to take out cost and improve revenue for our customers, primarily in logistics. My background's Lean Six Sigma and technology, and I apply both of those in the deployment of these agents to really improve those business processes using AI.
Hi, I'm Rob Smith. I'm an entrepreneur, consultant, and academic. I've been in AI for about 35 years. I co-founded and served as CTO for a software business that serves blue chip companies internationally. I've created AI systems that are in use globally, and I'm the author of Rage Inside the Machine, a book about AI and prejudice. I currently advise boards, and I serve as fractional CTO for a number of AI companies.
What do you think is the most exciting thing that's happened in the AI sphere this year?
I think we've seen governments up and down across the globe taking AI more seriously, and there's been a shift towards regulation governance. From my perspective, that's a positive sign.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I do genuinely think that people are talking and thinking a lot more about what AI is doing and how that affects society. So I definitely agree. Rick, what do you think? The most
I think
exciting thing?
Okay, so I can do two for you. The first one is that the word hallucination is becoming much more used in general conversation about AI. And I'm talking about people who aren't in the industry at all. So that's a really positive step forward, because it does bleed well into the remaining conversation today. No, the biggest thing this year was DeepSeek. Instantly, they showed, a group of people showed that by being smarter and by using the stuff better, they've been able to train a very, very, very good AI platform using 5% the power. When I say very good, I mean it's equivalent to what the best work by OpenAI was, so a ChatGPT equivalent. And they achieved it with 5% of the power. And that means 5% of the processors, and that means 5% of the number of nuclear power stations. What I'm saying is they're getting the formula right, where I think a lot of the big players are still not quite getting there. And it caused ripples throughout the whole industry, down to NVIDIA having impacts on their questionable future earnings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we need to see a lot more of that. We've seen the second one of those recently, and it's going to continue.
I guess disruption again is something that drive all industry forward, but this is definitely one that's driving AI forward as well, like different options. Adrian, what do you think?
Thanks, though. Good question. Whilst obviously I find some of the viral moments are quite fun, particularly the gorilla selfie influencers. I think for me this year, the real highlight has been how AI has started to blend into the actual way that we do work, and particularly with our particular focus on AI agents. It seems that there's now shifted from novelty to now be a core operational capability. And we've seen this upfront with our customers, where you're actively exploring how it can really drive competitive advantage by slashing the time and costs. So I think the exciting part is simple. I think it's no longer limited to producing content, as has historically been the way, but now it's actually helping companies run faster, more reliably, and more profitable.
Brilliant. And last but not least, Rob, you've been in the industry for many years. You're someone that's been with it for 20, 30 years, right? So
Sure.
this is a kind of a culmination of a dream. So in the last year, what do you think?
It is. I think the most exciting thing that I've seen is that people who aren't in AI are developing instincts about the difference between AI thinking and human thinking. And it's really commonplace. Like from the point, Rick Beato, if anybody watches him on YouTube, Rick Beato's children can recognize AI songs that he can't tell. Like they hear it and they know it's AI. These instincts about what is AI generated and what is human, and a respect for the special things that humans do, is the most positive outcome of AI in many ways. I think that it's going to be the real game changer, is that people are going to come to appreciate what human beings do, especially more, because AI does so many things mechanically the way that it does it, which is not bad and helpful, but not what human beings do. And I think lay people beginning to respect that is the most exciting thing going on.
So if I take that in context, what we're talking about here is people thinking more about the effects that it has, people disrupting, what the effects are and how it can be delivered, people thinking about how it can be delivered, within a business context, but also people starting to really understand the limits and the actual uses of the business. So it's starting to become something that's a structure, that's a platform, that's almost like a utility, I think, within business. But like with all utilities, there are pros and cons and definitely ways to kind of manage this. So I guess then when we speak about artificial intelligence as a utility, as something that we are all in business and all leaders within business, I guess my first question is, do we see this as a creative partner? Do we see this as something that can help us to expand and grow our businesses and, grow economies? Or do we see it as a threat and as something that can be used negatively? Because I think within industry and also in wider society, there's a lot of this conversation going. So I guess, Rob, you've been with the industry for the longest period of time. What do you think? How do you see it?
Well, can it be a creative partner, or can it be a very bad thing. I think that it is being both simultaneously right now. I think in some ways it's driving to a head a movement of how digitization has affected human behavior for many, many years. The schematization of things, the automation of things has negative consequences, and now those have been maximalized. And I think that's positive. For instance, HR, I'm sure everybody knows, HR has a harder time finding good people now because of AI, not an easier time. It's become critical, I think, in many ways. And that's true across a lot of fields, is scamming, there are nation states built on scamming now. Scamming is at a maximum. So I think that this driving the bad effects to a maximum yields the idea of what do we do with good effects. And I'll mention one thing that I think is really important. If anyone hasn't read the Centaur and Cyborgs paper, you can just search Google Centaur and Cyborgs paper. What you'll find is that this is a study where they looked at a number of BCG consultants doing a task, and they found that people broke down into categories: people who used AI everywhere, and people who use AI selectively and with their own creative juices flowing, stimulated by the AI. And the latter category did measurably better. And I think that's a theme, is that you can make your workers work better if they use AI to enhance their own creative capabilities as a creative partner, rather than thinking of it as the delivery of the answer. Because in most businesses, the answer is really quite subtle and involves a lot of things that are very difficult to thoroughly specify. So if you get the human being who can understand subtlety working collaboratively with the AI, that is an incredible source of adjacency between ideas. If you get those things working together, you've got something really positive. If you treat it as a thing to basically do your work for you, you get AI slop. And there is a really good Harvard Business Review paper about AI work slop. That's a really useful paper to look at too, which is causing a decline in productivity because AI has been being used inappropriately and causing workflows, multi-party workflows, to work worse. So it's both things, but it needs to be used the right way.
Mona, you obviously come at this as well with education, but also with the political influence that you have. What do maybe governments think about this, and what do education establishments think about this?
No, so building on what Rob said, the potential is directly linked with what the user's intentions are, and how we nurture this as an extension or as an enabler rather than a replacement of human resources. That, I think, is important. In education, we've seen when we select out case studies as examination case studies, and on the day when you ask students to respond to questions, if they use Gen AI, LLMs to write responses, they are okay, but they are just okay. So they will probably get a pass grade because it understands enough and it's able to respond quickly. But those who are able to differentiate between using a cheat sheet versus putting in their understanding and knowledge and applying the models, that's something which AI or Gen AI isn't able to do right now. And that's what we are trying to focus on, is it's okay for students to get okay grades, but the differentiation has to be those who are actually applying their knowledge, understanding, empirical data, and that does not come by cheating through the system, because the system can't really apply in practical situations as easily as a human being can. So that's something which we're learning as educators, to look at whether the references are hallucinated, whether they are made up. So we're looking at things which we wouldn't look in the traditional sense, but we're looking at that when you're looking for similarity, where does the information come from? From a governance perspective, unfortunately, AI is building peer pressure and is creating the sense of we need to be the best, or we need to be the first. And my oral evidence at the Houses of Parliament earlier this year was the UK cannot be better at so many things as compared to, some of the other parts of the world which have more models, the US, more patents like China, more skills like other parts of the world, including India. But where we can be better is where we bring together the global south and north. Where we can get better is improving the AI literacy. And this is not making everybody to code. We don't want the whole population to be data scientists, but what we need people to understand is how are AI models being trained, how their data, knowingly or unknowingly, is actually training these models. How do they know what they should challenge, whether something looks too good to be true? Is this AI generated? Is this real? Are their decisions on, for example, whom they vote for, influenced by something they saw on social media? That understanding and literacy is where I think we can really bring the good out for us as a country and focus on collaborations. We are good with that. We have a history. We have a lot of working relationship up and down the globe through Commonwealth. We need to really put that to good use by building those connections and working with countries, working with partners, with those ecosystems that we have built over a long period of time to ensure that we build on strengths in different parts of the world and then deliver good. And, something which I strongly believe is if we can go back and reflect on how COVID brought us together, this has to really, really put, we have to up the amp in terms of working together as collaborators, because this whole experience of using machines and algorithms to rule us is significantly more important than the pandemic, and the impact can be significantly higher because we don't know how these systems operate and work and interact and influence. So we need to go back a few years and think about how do we work together. So I'll shut up there.
Rick, Adrian, anything to add on that?
My perspective is actually quite an interesting one, I hope. So AI coding is a massively big topic where, should we say 2 or 3 years back, we all started copying and pasting snippets of code in and out of ChatGPT. And we are all very amazed with how quite quickly it actually was able to, add bits and pieces to what we're looking for, find errors. And that has this year manifested into not something copy and paste, because you wear out the keys after a while, but into an actual integrated environment where AI coding will now actually be thoroughly part of your world. You're now using English statements to drive whole sections of development. And it started becoming called vibe coding, which to me is an awful thing. It sounds like a party. But vibe coding was basically, here's my source code, and would you mind changing the color of this button, or would you mind adding a new total or whatever? And it didn't really have the full context at that time. And this is back to your original question about, is this a partner or is this a threat? Pretty much every coder grew in fear and said, oh, goodness, this is going to take my job. By providing decent specifications, etc., all of a sudden I will be out of work and I will be unable to do anything further. And AI is going to take over from the coding perspective. I've been using AI coding now in anger for many, many, many months. As soon as it became integrated, I got into that. And it's now moved beyond this vibe coding, which is, should we say, a narrow band of context. Should we put it that way? To say its understanding of your system is actually quite small. And so you can only do small things to your system. You can't easily architect big changes or have it make big changes without screwing everything up. That's the reality. Hallucination City. I think vibe coding has become a very popular thing, and a lot of people are burning tokens doing vibe coding. It's now moved into spec coding. And then I started thinking, wow, this is really, really big. I pass it literally 500 documents out of specification. Don't ask me why it's 500. It's too long a topic to discuss here. But basically, I give it the whole system specification, and I say, we're now working on this little bit over here. Can you please go and, let's start writing those tests. Let's start writing the whatever facility I want to add. And I started thinking this might be true now that programmers are going to start getting pushed out the way. In reality, it's changed the role. It hasn't actually changed the fact that we need programmers. My role is now, and you'll love this, having once been a 12-hour-a-day coder and grinding away at lines of code, I'm now spending 6 to 7 of those hours reading and confirming specifications and task sets to ensure that what it's about to do makes sense, that it falls in line with what we're doing, and just stop it hallucinating. I then basically go through a tick list of, should we say, up to 40 items. And by the time that's all done, with the correct structures around it, I've ended up taking what would be 10 weeks of work into a couple of days, and then a few more days beyond that for testing. And that's great. It's not going to replace me. It doesn't have the ability to think through the bigger picture where humans can. And getting an AI to the point that it has this kind of, should we say, and I'm not trying to be boastful here, but some kind of a natural inclination as to whether or not this is the right way to go. It's really hard for it to do that. It is now becoming, and in fact, I'm writing an article series about this. It's becoming the thing that is my AI. It's my coding buddy. It's not actually doing it as a subordinate, but it's doing it as a peer. And I'm now basically doing pair coding with an AI coder working next to me. I'm forever busy checking and pointing out, hold on, you've already done something like this. Let's look at that code rather. Here's a good source for your next piece of work. And I think it's a partner. And that was your question. Is it a threat or a partner? It felt like a threat earlier in the year. The reality, and I think Rob might have a lot to add to that, the reality is the hype never quite got met, and it won't be met for many years to come, that this is going to completely turn the programming world upside down. It enables a lot more than you might think. For example, just as a final closing statement, I am now programming language agnostic. I can write in any programming language because the logic of coding is still the same. Just the execution and how you manifest it is now best suited to the use case rather than the brain of the developer. So that's been a massive step forward for me, but I still say my earlier answers were still applicable, DeepSeek and hallucination.
Aidan, you're talking to businesses and you're trying to, using the Ripple technology to make it a creative partner. So what do you think about this particular question?
Oh, it's a great question to start with. I mean, I can talk certainly from the operational coalface where we're working at the moment. I think personally, I think creativity is uniquely human, right? So I think that AI will amplify the creativity within businesses, but not replace it. I mean, I think, we see this every day when we deploy AI agents as teammates to our customers, and they focus on those manual and admin tasks that typically drain the creative energy from teams. And that deployment of AI agents means that the key staff members in our customers can focus on the tasks that actually require human creativity. And that balance, that teamwork between AI and humans, I think yields happier teams which deliver more productive processes and at the end of the line give a higher level of customer satisfaction for our customers. So I think that's what we're seeing.
So if we kind of, progress this forward, do you see, people, just to kind of put this out to all of you, do you see this as being something that has changed through the year, that people are becoming more positive or more negative about the particular threats or advantages of AI?
I can jump in. More sonorous. People are becoming more sonorous. Like the responses we got, all the responses we got here, total agreement that everybody's seeing it the right way. And amongst lay people not as well informed as our panel here, I'm seeing the same thing. That's what's amazing, is you're beginning to see people actually communicate with it about it in a way that isn't completely full of hype. And I realized while we were talking that I referred to HR, to your business, to recruiting people earlier. I think that people are beginning to realize that people who put in the time to really try to do things the right way on top of what AI does, that's what really succeeds. And I know GCS are in the business of doing a good job of finding people through people. Those kind of realizations are profound. And I think that's been the change over the year. I mean, at the beginning of this year, the amount of people I talked to about AI who used the word agentic as if it was going to do everything, right? At the beginning of this year, everyone was saying agentic. Oh, as soon as it becomes agentic, it'll do everything. And also all the AGI hype is gone now, isn't it? I mean, no one believes it anymore. I mean, sure, we may get to AGI someday, not with this technology, not right now. And you got to remember 2 years ago, people were saying it was going to be ChatGPT 5. That AGI was going to be in ChatGPT 5. There were high predictions. I think 70%, the betting markets were saying 70% likely that ChatGPT 5 would be AGI. And it's not. And a lot of people knew that. Now everybody knows. And this sonorousness around the message around AI is very encouraging. Now we may have to have an AI bubble burst. That may have to happen, right? And we may be in the middle of it right now. Who knows? I can't believe that it won't burst. It seems to me that making a smooth transition now is impossible. But at least people kind of get it. And I think people really get it at every level. And that's really encouraging.
Rick, we start seeing the financial folk start darting. And when Michael Burry came out with his very quick analysis of the asset depreciation curve that AI, the big users of AI are on, and he started calling that out as being a problem, that is a dreadful worry. And then you get HSBC saying, hold on, the actual numbers that they need to turn over to cover off all these promises that they've made. It's astounding. I saw the first writings on the wall around about April, I think, when Microsoft decided not to follow through on a number of letters of intent to purchase power. And they were talking about purchasing some serious amounts of power, which is a general topic I think we should at some point broach during this conversation. But fundamentally, they were starting to say, we don't believe that we're going to meet the hype, even with all this power there and all these data centers that we're thinking of building. It's unlikely we're going to meet the hype. And I think that's going to be the big gotcha. I think, Rob, your AI burst prediction is going to be entirely based on the emperor's clothing. It's a frightening picture. And the crazy thing is that this particular bubble has had the biggest amount of money thrust against it ever. It's more money than anyone can ever think. And I think
I'll
that's
jump in and
massive.
say this is
Go on.
it's not like the tulip bubble. It's like the railroad bubble. Like the tulip, when a commodity bubble happens, you lose all your value. It's gone. When a infrastructure bubble happens, the value's still there. It's just not going to pay off in the same amount of time, and it's not deployed properly. So for AI specialists and AI companies, the thing to think about is what assets do you try to buy after the bubble burst? And I think compute's going to get cheaper, a lot cheaper, because at least for a little while, because of overdevelopment. And I think that, and people talk about chips going out of date. Chips don't go out of date. Chips just aren't as good as the other chips, right? The chips will still be good. They just won't be as good as some other chips that come out. And that capacity, like the railroad overbuilding during the railroad bubble, is going to be useful. The smart people are the people who are going to buy that overcapacity after the bubble burst.
If you look at the cyclical investment amongst the top market cap companies in the world, they just and when you look at the market capital value, and is that supported by their current revenues or physical assets? So I'm an accountant by training. It just doesn't make sense. Something is fundamentally wrong, and all they're doing is investing in one another. And it's about 4, 5, maybe 10 companies that we're talking about in that small loot, which is dictating a lot of the hype in the technology. What we also need to really look at, and from putting my my governance hat on, who sits on those boards? And who is asking those difficult questions? Almost all of them are based in the US. And we know the current state of, the governance in the US. As long as you're making money and as long as you're based there, it's good. There are no questions asked. How do we then bring other parties and other perspectives to say, where are we moving, and do we actually understand the hype and the extent to which? I mean, the CEO of Microsoft said, you have to be careful what it says. We're not sure how we're going to deliver what we predict. That is a serious statement coming from Microsoft. And so it's an interesting thing. The problem is that these 5, 10, 15, whatever, it's a very handful companies are the ones who are pocketing a lot of money. But just like the financial crisis we had in 2008, and it's in fact worse now, is that we are far more integrated than we were a decade back. These systems are talking to other systems without us really understanding how it influences. So when things go wrong, and because we are trying to change so quickly, we don't have really any time to do proper quality assurance, risk management, which is partly the problem that Europe is facing, including us, is that we are a bit more risk averse. We want to do things right. But the rest of them are just moving forward. So we are trying to kick out all the niceties, all the safeguards, because we want to kind of catch up with the race, with the rest of the world. That has a fundamental flaw. We don't know where we are going wrong, and we won't know how to fix it because we don't have the safeguards in place. The whole concept of safety and assurance and risk is seem to be as extra, not essential in the current race. Whereas I think it is absolutely fundamental that those who are playing with these huge numbers and huge economies, the market cap of these countries is higher than any country on the earth. So when they are making those predictions, etc., it's serious effort. We need to, take a step back. It would be nice if everybody could just take a pause and say, let's understand where we are and where we are moving. It's not happening, but it would be nice, is my genuine interpretation of where we are and how we can with any luck understand how to fix it when we hit that ignition.
Fantastic. And I think that kind of leads me to my next kind of main question, which is really about understanding. And you spoke there about, Mona, kind of understanding the economy, the scale, and how these things happen. And I'm just kind of interested from your guys, quite a lot when myself as a lay person works with this. We see AI working, but we don't really understand the kind of the background of it and how it can be kind of explicable. We just see it. And do you think, guys, that we should really understand how this works? There should be more input into people understanding this whole model, or does it just work and do we see it like a car? The car runs and we don't really question how the car runs. Adrian, I know you're really looking at bespoking systems into companies, so I guess that means they really have to understand what it's doing for them. So what do you think on this?
Yeah, it's a great question, David. I think the effectiveness of AI is critical, but I think it's a false choice for enterprises, because I think, if you have effectiveness without explainability, then it's reckless in a deployment of AI. Because I think, for example, if you had an AI agent that was handling your pricing without giving any reasoning behind its decisions, I think that's a huge risk for a business. I also think conversely, if you have explainability without having effectiveness, then it's just theater, right? It's like a Hollywood Western film set. There's nothing behind the front. It's just for the sake of adhering to whatever the requirement is. I think the actual requirement, certainly from the operational organizations I'm talking to, is a blend of both. You need to have effectiveness because this is the bottom line. And to the point around the bubble bursting, I think the fundamental bottom line for a lot of the companies I'm dealing with, certainly in the operational process space, is that AI improves operational performance, right? So irrespective of whether a model changes or whether some bubble pops somewhere, applying AI gives you an improvement. So therefore, it's an imperative. But you have to have explainability. You have to be able to have audit trails and administrative checks to ensure that your AI being effective isn't causing other damage to your organization. And that's what we make sure we have in our platform, those checks and balances and admin intercepts.
What do you think, Rick?
I'm completely with Adrian. I think the ability to work out how it got to a decision is going to continue to be the golden goose, if you wish, to ensure that you can trust what it's doing. The other thing that is as a massive topic generally, and I suppose I was speaking about it earlier, human oversight. And we've all spoken about not just taking its word for it, not just sending what it's generated. I always regard it as a leg up. I regard it as a starter for 10. And I then sit down and work through whatever it's put forward and just really make sure that, and this is for anything, I use AI a lot, and not just for coding, but I do think that the whole acceptability of it will be based entirely upon what Adrian just said. You've got to be able to see the reason. You've got to be able to see the logic, and the platforms need that building in as a standard. It's got to be there all the time, much like an employee. The other thing that I think it's worth just keeping in mind as a general, I guess, further conversation opener, you're not going to say to a client, oh, the AI decided to do this. When I sent the email, it was the AI that wrote all the content, and it's at fault now. They will say it's you. And you're putting your signature against all of this. So that's why I put as much effort into ensuring that I don't fully trust it, that I do fully check everything that it brings forward. So, the point of culpability does not move when you're using AI. The culpability remains exactly the same. You are responsible. And that's a key kind of element behind this, is you've got to keep remembering who's going to be taking the blame if it goes wrong.
How do you find this links into education, Mona? Obviously people giving answers in an education. I believe, are an educator, you have students, when they're giving you answers, how do you think this whole idea of how decisions are made, how, theories are put forward links into education?
What we've now decided as a universities is let module conveners choose 3 options on each module. So it's at a module level, we make a decision whether we tell the student you can't use Gen AI, or you can use AI or Gen AI for creating a structure or understanding the context, or you are using AI to write the entire response, and therefore you're not actually marking the response but how you got there. So at a module level, we make that decision. In my case, when I look at my post-experience programs, it's not about whether they can, it's online assignments and online examinations. It's not actually about whether they can write 1,000-word response to a question, but it is about how did they apply what was taught on the module? What theories did they use? What models did they use? How did they integrate the empirical data in their analysis? Do they show an understanding of applying an abstract theory in an organizational context, in a practical context, which is what they need to do in the real life? When they've understood how to apply, the learning from their higher education into business. So the target has moved. The post isn't anymore whether they can recite a definition or whether they can remember the acronym of a model. That's not what we're testing anymore. It's not about whether they can come up with a 500-word response to a question, because if they're clever enough to tell the prompt, they can. So now it's about whether they actually understood the case study, whether they understood the theory, whether they've applied that, and how have they integrated that storytelling. So now the focus is about Why did they use it? Have they told us what insights they are drawing rather than just plot something and not discuss the insights and how that build them to go to the next step? So the focus now is quite different from where it was pre Chat GPT and post Chat GPT, which is brilliant. And I hope to work with secondary schools around Reading, and in fact take that back to the universities to how to make students better with prompts. It's an essential skill. I don't think it's an add-on. It's about improving it myself. I'm learning to improve what I'm asking. Otherwise, you get into a fight with your LLM because they keep asking you questions, and you're like, no, I don't want to answer any more questions. I want you to do this. I want you to summarize this. Don't ask me 20 questions, because by the end of that, you say I've reached the maximum limit for the day. So it's about learning how to get the best out of your buddy, as Richard said. And we need to learn how they are behaving, because they're changing and they're getting cleverer. So we need to get cleverer to beat the system by saying, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying not to give me the response by asking too many questions. So no, I don't want that. And I want to get better and getting you to do what I want you to do, because you're enabling me rather than me enabling you to learn something from our discussion. So it's an interesting phase. I've got a teenage at home who's going to university next year, and it's about explaining, honey, it's not about cheating the system. It's about getting better to summarize Macbeth if you want to understand. So it's having those discussions with young people to make them understand why, depending on some of these tools to summarize stuff, to enable, consolidate stuff is fine. It's absolutely okay if you're going to, rather than read Shakespeare for, the whole textbook for 2 days, if it's going to do that in less than 2 minutes, that's fine. But then you then apply your understanding, go back and look at those quotations and then try and translate that in your own meaning. I think we've done a good job if we get to that point.
Well, and I guess the kind of the answer to that question, therefore, is, we're looking for experts to be the people that explain it and to be the people that understand it. Is that how you see it?
I
You're
was
also
just
an
going to say,
educator.
Mona, that was so encouraging. That's one of those encouraging things I've heard in a long time. And I think some of the things that may be going on with AI, I'm going to answer the explainability question. I'll get to it in a minute. Is that idea of the return to critical thinking as being primary in education is what path did you follow to get here becomes the assessed item. And in fact, I'm working on a tool actually in that space for LLMs to make critical thinking an accessible path. So maybe we could talk about that someday, but that's a really interesting thing. And it's very encouraging to hear you saying what you're saying about education. I think, from what something Richard said earlier, I think in coding, you're seeing the return of architecture. Yeah, the return, not just architecture in the sense of a diagram, architecture in the sense of an architect's practice within coding, right? Because you can generate the code, big deal. It's figuring out how you architect it so you don't have horrible screw ups. But the last thing I'll say on this is in terms of explainability, I think explainability is absolutely vital, as everyone here has said. However, there are places where AI's irreducible lack of explainability is an advantage. I think hallucinations can be a feature, not a bug. I'll tell you a little short story is I once asked an AI the question, tell me in single words only the good things about your mother. Now, those who are sci-fi fans will know where that's from, right? And it didn't. It thought, I questioned it a few more times. It couldn't answer the question very well. I said, what movie is it from? It said it was from American Psycho. And the people here all know it's from Blade Runner, obviously. It's the first line in Blade Runner. And the thing is that what I found most interesting about that is why American Psycho? What was the connection? And that what was the connection thing is really interesting about AI. It's a creative space. And by the way, I think this can be used in education too, is that effectively encouraging creativity with AI is something we can do. It's like go explore with it. Go figure out your essay by exploring this weird world of adjacencies that exist inside the black box. So there are advantages to the black box, but it depends on how it's used. And certainly in many ways, people are learning, be careful about its use in some areas, don't be careful. You can play in other areas, and that's really good. So I think Adrian put his hand up.
Sure, Adrian.
Great point. I think just from, I guess it's my background, Lean Six Sigma and process variation. And we've seen it at the coalface where if you let an AI out of constraints, or if you let an LLM out of constraints, you don't manage exactly what it's doing. In the context of a business process, variation then creeps in, and that can be damaging for organizations who need repeatability. So I think you're absolutely right, but I think it's a time and a place to let AI off the leash. And certainly for some of the operational processes that we're dealing with, that isn't the time.
Richard?
Is that AI hallucination turning into creativity? It's that sounds like a very cool parallel concept. I actually define hallucination as being insufficient information in the prompt in the first place, that it really struggles to pick up on where you're trying to take it, and thus it ends up guessing. I think that whole self-assuredness has always been challenging. Even way back when Google first got going, we found 20 million references to this word in 0.001 of a second. People saying, come on, that's just dreaming. And I think, AI carries that through. The other problem is that, and indeed one of the people that I work with, he's a really clever chap from Oxford. He was coming up with a brand new little product called Parallel LLM, which takes the same prompt and passes it through 3 different back-end chosen AI platforms, and you take a look at the differences. And this, I think, in a nutshell, shows you why AI is so difficult to easily adopt. When you have a specific AI vendor saying, let's eat your entire budget for all your users to use our platform for the year, and then you realize that our platform doesn't do a specific part of your work very well. Another platform does. And you end up then, well, I don't have budget to give all my users that license as well. And you end up with this real kind of difficult situation that different platforms, and you start realizing this, do different things better. I've got huge examples of it here with the AI coding side of things, even when it comes to creative stuff or talking about marketing or project planning. The different platforms all give you very different approaches, and very often more than one is where you need to take it. It's just an interesting observation.
Now, Rick, just to kind of pick up on that, and my next question really was, and I know it's something that you're very interested in with regards to safe AI, which is a process that you've spoken about. Regulation. Do you feel that it's essential, or is slowing down innovation, or do you think there's not enough and there needs to be more and we need to slow down that innovation?
I think the British way is to deny it exists until such time as the problems start to happen, various things hit the fan. So like GDPR, most people didn't really take it very seriously until they started hearing that there were fines involved. And then you started getting these fines being applied, and they were really diluted. And then people started saying, well, it hasn't got much teeth. The regulatory side of AI is trying to not only ensure that the providers of AI platforms are doing right, but also the users are well coached and that they are well literate in the use of AI. And I know that at an EU level, the EU AI Act itself has potentially more vicious fines, but if you're going to dilute them, then the CEOs are still going to say, how much will it cost us to fix this problem? Oh, 2 million. What's the fine going to be? 4 million. I'll take a chance. So you'll get those reactions, but at the same time, I think it's a really responsible. The AI Act specifically is quite a responsible set of requirements. If you look at it, it's actually a good practice guide in my mind. So I see regulatory activities as being very, very, very powerful at getting sound adoption, safe adoption. Back to your actual question. So yes, I do like it. I straight away put together a day-long course of roughly 8 hours of training about prompting and about biases and about the legal implications of using AI, all that stuff, because I really soundly believe that regulatory will help to get good practices into place. So I see it as being an enabler, not in any way hindrance.
And I'm interested in what you said there before, Mona, in terms of the competing elements of AI, and that you think they were talking about the EU AI Act there, but then that other countries might not have that. So obviously, what this question is it slowing it down? Will this make the EU less competitive in terms of this type of industry? And I think the UK is within the EU for this particular context.
I'm going to answer the question slightly differently. The point blank answer, yes, Europe as a whole, we tend to be more, as I said, more risk averse, more quality assurance type of a culture. We just don't implement something and then think about it later on. That's not what we tend to do. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it does slow down the adoption because we have to go through a long chain of approval system, etc. The one way that we potentially could get around the issue is, I think, regulation, because the technology is evolving so quickly, and the technology and the models and the skills are dispersed throughout the globe, where we don't control the models or the data or everything in-house. The regulation would have to be more holistic, but at a very high level. Underneath that, at an industry or a sector level, they need to have best practices, reporting requirements, metric, etc., which means that peer groups will put pressure on each other to say, this is what we should be reporting, this is what we should make known. And that will enable companies working in a particular sector to work together. And at a lower level than that is, which standards do you adopt? What is the governance practice in individual organizations? Do you have an ethics board? Who sits on those boards? Are you welcoming external and internal stakeholders to challenge you and to hold you accountable? So the role of boards become very important. So it's standards and governance at a lower level. It's about best practices within the industry in your context, and these could be even from abroad, because your sector, you can learn best practices from elsewhere, and then regulation, which is more localized, but at a government level. So I think all three levels will have to work together, and regulation can't be very detailed, because by the time we come up with the regulation, the technology has moved significantly.
Rick, what do you think of that? You kind of tell what that.
I think that opens up, Mona. As usual, you have such a great way of summarizing so many topics in one. Here's the thing that I picked up on what you're talking about. First off, we are sending, or we're tasking fairly expensive, very, very, very accomplished platforms with the most simple things. So we're putting human level chats into ChatGPT, and we're asking it really dumb questions. But yet, it's a massive platform that costs a fortune on its token usage, etc. So first off, it's uneconomical. People are using it instead of Google for lookups, and that costs 20 times the amount of energy alone. There's a challenge there. The second thing that Mona said that really, really did strike home with me, I'm not the LLM guy. I do use LLMs as a human, talking to systems, etc., or talking to a backend to pick up on specific things that are broader than my current line of thoughts. Back to what Adrian was saying before, you've got to build platforms that actually are task-based. And for that reason, I tend to prefer small language models, which are basically trained in the language and trained in the capability, and then given a supplementary data set that is actually going to help it to make the specific decisions that you need it to make. Important point, these are small enough to run them locally. These are small enough to build them locally, and indeed they're small enough to run in a sovereign manner in the UK. So from that perspective, I think that the UK's growth is going to probably come from small language models that consume a hell of a lot less power, that are able to make decisions based on, I guess, a really tightly governed data set in the first place, and not have this massive brain, should we say, or this world knowledge answering a really tiny percentage of its total knowledge pool. And I think that's where it's going to go, because we can't afford to keep on building bigger and bigger and bigger models. That doesn't happen anymore. ChatGPT has the reputation of not actually improving them very much in between models. That the corpus, as they call it, that the actual body of knowledge that it's trained on, isn't really growing. So you end up then with just the Unimind, this massive thing, and we're asking it, what is 2 + 2? And it's saying, come on, that's not a push. Whereas I can come up with a small language model that will answer that question accurately every time of day, all day, for milliwatts compared to megawatts.
And Rob, you're working as a fractional advisor for many of these AI businesses. Is this what you're seeing, that people are focusing more on very specific elements and processes and sectors?
Absolutely. Of course, I work with a lot of startups. A lot of those are going to use APIs and to bigger models. But ultimately, I think that servicing the domain-focused needs that should be, a startup should have a firm focus. It's one of the main things it should have. Those foci are going to be about smaller models ultimately. Richard's absolutely right. I mean, for many reasons, for energy consumption, for locality, for sovereignty, and for focus, and eliminating hallucinations. Of course, there's a tricky balance to be struck, because fluency, a lot of the fluency comes from the fact that it has everything in the world stored in it. So there's there's a subtlety about how you use a model within a problem. It's not going to be a chatbot anymore at some point, because its fluency may be lower, but it will be something that serves a particular purpose. And a lot of that will involve AI beyond the transformer, right? Wiring a model in to do AI within a domain focus may be not just about having a transformer model, a ChatGPT style model. It'll be about having it coupled with an optimizing model, a decision-making model, a planning model that aren't necessarily neural networks at all. The return of the old AI, right? So all of that is definitely the future and what's going on. I think a lot of people I work with are probably using an API to one of the major language models now, but it's probably not the best way to do the job. But it may be the best way to start up a business, but not the best way to do a job. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's really what's going on.
Adrian, is
plus
that what
one
you
there.
see? Is that what you see yourself? When you're speaking to businesses, that what they want is something specific for them.
Yeah, I mean, certainly on the regulation side of things, the businesses, the services we provide, certainly under the EU AI Act, are all minimal risk in their operational processes. But I get a lot, and we work globally, right? And I get a lot of concern from some of our customers around, is this going to stifle what we're trying to achieve from a productivity perspective? And I think certainly regulation-wise, there has to be, going forwards, there has to be a balance between the risk of stifling the huge productivity gains that you can make using some of these models, whilst also ensuring that personal identifiable data is protected, and even corporate sensitive or intellectual property is protected from those larger models, because that's proprietary data that needs to be part of their business intelligence. So I think what I'm seeing out there is that you need to enable productivity without putting too much regulation on it, but conversely, you need to also make sure that there are checks and balances in place.
I guess my last question about this, and we are on the Leaders Series, is I'd like to get all of your opinions on this. Is what we do in the Leaders Series, we talk about leadership. And this, whether you think is an AI bubble, or this is not as good as you think it will be, this is something that will change our culture and the way we do business. Do you think it could replace leadership, or do you think it will refine and enhance it? It's a similar question, I guess, to the kind of partner or threat, but for the CEO, for the Prime Minister, what does this mean to them? Rob, what do you think?
Well, Before you get to leadership, I'll recommend a book, and I'll cite something. There's a book called Intelligence in the Flesh. I can't remember the author. It's really good. Not a very well read book, I don't think. I don't think many people read it, but I loved it. And what it talks about is the fact that, I'll give you a little story from it. Is it talks about what a waitress in a diner does. And what a waitress in a diner does is really complicated and involves everything from human feelings, reading human emotions, logistical planning, balance, tons of activities simultaneously at very high speed. And that we're very, very, very far from replacing a waitress, right? We're really far from replacing a leader because like most human jobs, and probably perhaps more than any human job, leadership is not about mechanical decision making. It's not about any of those things. It's about mentoring. It's about sensitivity. It's about discipline. It's about planning. It's about dealing with unforeseen circumstances. It's about personality. It's about many, many things. Leadership is about a lot of complicated stuff. And I know we've all known great leaders and we've all known poor leaders. Which ones would be more easily substituted with an AI? Just ask yourself that question in terms of what they do every day. And it ain't the good leaders, right? So I think that leadership will be enhanced by AI. I think all the capabilities we've talked about here can make leadership better. And in fact, maybe it frees the leader to do more of what real leadership is. And that's what we really want, right? Is we want the leader to be freed from tedium and able to do all these relationship things that make for powerful leadership. Not just relationship, but also reasoning and planning and ideation, all that kind of stuff that a leader should be able to do. And as I've always said, and I think I started at this place, is that separation of the mechanical from the really human is the real advantage. That's where we're at. It's really exciting. And I think in leadership, it's the same thing, is we can make it sit in its right place and make the person sit in the right place, then something really wonderful will happen.
I've just thought to myself that what I should do is I should bring maybe a talking LLM on and actually try and do the Leaders Series podcast with it. I think Grok would be a good one because it's got no filter, has it? So
Yeah,
I could do that. Would be great.
I tell you, I think that's a good idea. But one of the things that I think you can say AI is a bit like cold reading, a psychic cold reading you, because effectively you will be providing the leadership, David. That's what will happen. It'll look like it's doing it, but your questions will be the questions that make it go in the right place. So it's easy to get fooled that way. The way a psychic fools somebody with cold reading is effectively you're really the one who'll be providing the inputs, and it'll look like it's doing a great job, but really it's the subtlety of Dave Bloxham leading along that will make it go to the right place.
I think that's my power in all these conversations, Ro. Rick, what do you think?
Actually, that's what you're doing here too.
Rick, what do you think?
So I think it'll definitely be an informant to leadership. It'll be a way of leaders getting their information more effectively in the style that they want. I think the challenge comes, and this is almost like on a human level. If all you do with your whole day is do ideation and do the top end stuff, you're going to be tired. You're not going to be able to continue at that high level of pace day in, day out, 8 hours a day of shaking hands and kissing babies and all the other things. At some point, you will need to take a break. And David, you may have been on the TBAI meeting where we had the medical guys on the panel. It was fascinating because one of the people said, AI is going to do all, in essence, the dross stuff and take care of the kind of repetitive and stuff that's consuming a lot of time and allowing me to do my ticket. And I remember that phrase exactly, allow me to do my ticket, implying this is what I was trained and this is what I've been to university to do. But doing your ticket, 8 hours of working day, etc., that may become a new form of exhaustion that we need to be careful of. And you almost want to say, look, the David Bloxham specialities can't be an 8-hour job because that's just too strong. That's just too much. So I think there'll be a new set of challenges.
can't just roll this stuff out, Rick. With, it's not easy, is it? It's not easy to be.
So
You make it look easy,
I,
David.
I lecture quite a lot on this topic, and I do say there's no such thing as AI dust that you just sprinkle across the situation. It just makes it better. I love the fact that Adrian mentioned lean earlier, because that's, I believe, is the actual best framework or the best approach to getting a decent AI adoption, because at least you've got some KPIs to make sure that you're delivering something of value, and it continues to be of value. Where I think up to now, the AI adoption has been very much as shiny toys, very nice to have, and look, it does this wonderful thing, and look, it can even make a funny picture. But actually, business value hasn't been brought into the equation at this point. So I do believe that lean is going to help us to align this to what our leaders need. I think it's going to inform our leaders, and I do think that the working paradigm is going to change, obviously, because of AI generally. But we also need to be very conscious of getting overloaded, doing the special stuff. You're going to end up just being so special, we'll call you a snowflake, David, which I don't think you want us to call you.
No way. Adrian, what do you think? What do you think with your lean, looking at it from a lean way? And for those that don't know, that's because you're in such good shape, Adrian. It's because this is a certain type of project management and a business process tool, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's my AI filter that I haven't put on. But no, I think
That's right.
Rick,
So it's
great point Rick raised there. And I think, I don't on the leadership side, I do not think AI is going to replace leadership. I agree completely with that. But I think it's going to take, to Rick's point, the leaden diving boots off leaders from the having to manage productivity, throughput, those manual admin processes, by enabling them to focus their teams on what really matters and achieve strategic intent more rapidly. I mean, to the point around repetitive leadership tasks, I agree with that. But I also think that taking away some of the admin burden from their teams enables leaders to focus on potential growth. So we have one customer, a VP of operations, who asked us to come in and put in a team of AI agents to look at their customs clearance, the logistics business customs clearance process. And what that actually enabled them to do was free up strategic capacity for that individual then to focus on, instead of processing manual documents that were coming through and wondering whether a team were adhering to this and whether customers were getting annoyed, she actually could then take her time from that and focus on growth opportunities. She opened a new market in the US. And I think that's what AI empowered leadership is going to look like in the future. It's elevation from the tactical aspects to the more strategic. And yes, some of those elements may be repetitive, but it gives you the opportunity and the more cerebral focus on bigger rewarding activities such as growth. That's my view.
Man, how are leaders that you work with, and how are you as a leader viewing this?
I'll take an analogy from the sitcom Yes, Prime Minister. If Jim Hacker and his core team were not to be bothered by remembering every fact, every section written in the law, and if that AI could help them to say, this is what we've done in the past, this is how we've saved money, etc., that's brilliant. But AI couldn't actually come up with how would it work in practice. What works for us culturally? What are the benefits? How will you approach people from different parts of the governance? Because there is no single way to approach a problem. And that's what leaders will really do, is use efficiencies that the algorithm can do very quickly. They can look at large spans of data. They can summarize it. You still need to question where it came from and what it means and how you're going to take that insight into a decision that still sits with you. So you are still relevant, but it helps you reduce the time and you're taking the most up-to-date information. So I think, it's another permanent secretary who's sitting with you. It just happens to be that they can't annoy you as much as Sir Humphreys does. So, it's the best of both worlds.
Wonderful. So as our final question, I'm just interested to get a sound bite from you guys. As AI experts, and we've really talked through and so much great insight on AI and artificial intelligence and where it can lead us. We're halfway through the decade now. And at the end of the decade, it'll be 2030. And so much has happened in this field in the last 5 years. Where do you hope artificial intelligence will be in 2030? If we were to do this again in 2030, where do you hope it will be? And ladies first. So Mona, what do you think?
I desperately hope it doesn't take as long as it's taken us to talk about Heathrow's Runway 3, to actually implement these powerful capabilities to deliver the savings and efficiencies that we desperately need as a country. And organizations here, we need to start using them for what really is a no-brainer, to save time, to make it efficient, to ensure that the decisions are based on data that has been crunched and has looked at all the data. We need to really move on from it's brilliant and, we will look at it. No. We need to start, putting our fingers there, using it for where we desperately need to save time. If we can achieve more, that would be a bonus. But if we are still not talking about how we're going to save efficiencies and improve, we're going to save time for everybody in government, we've lost the plot. We've not done anything with, something that we could do here and now. So that's where I would really hope, and our kids would know how to use these tools effectively to improve their learning rather than to stop critically thinking. Those are the 2 points.
Brilliant. So we've achieved some stuff. That's what we hope. Rick?
So it's a big question, and if we just search backwards for a moment, and I've always maintained that the internet has been a way of funneling money into America. That's just a fundamental raison d'etre for the internet. It's to allow American organizations to get money
Apologies to
internationally.
our American friend here, Robert.
I was going to say, Rob,
I'm British now, so
I take all of this and frame it in saying I'm not necessarily against that, but it has been an excellent mechanism to get that. So beyond that, we've got the same thing happening again. That's why I opened with this, where the majority of the money flows toward US-based large organizations. My hope by 2030 is that we have a good amount of trust in the AI that we are deploying, that we have great guardrails so we can vouch for the reasoning and the processing that it's doing, and that we are getting our sovereignty right around it, i.e. we aren't reliant upon external factors all the time, because although we have a very linked up and global world, there are times when this becomes a threat much more than we may believe. So my hope is that we gain sovereignty, guardrails, and trust in the AI that we're delivering.
We're protecting ourselves. Adrian?
I think, didn't we invent the internet initially? So that would be shooting ourselves in the foot if we're created an engine for US. But I mean, look, I think maybe certainly to your point, Rick, around the generation of cash, I think maybe that's a reflection on the US market's willingness to invest in those companies. I think maybe the UK could take a leaf out of that book and support innovation in this country. So I think that's possibly one thing. But for me, so for 2030, I think I'd probably look at 3 things. So I would like to, certainly from the operational focus that we have at Ripple, I would like to see that AI is blended into the day-to-day life, the day-to-day working life in operations, as if it was, today we have Wi-Fi or electricity. In that context, people just accept that AI is part of the new norm, the new paradigm that is augmented workflow, not replacing workload, but actually augmenting it. I think I'd like to see, where relevant, it handling the end-to-end workflows where there isn't necessarily the need for a human interface, and that can then help release those staff to go and focus on the more value-add activities. And I think that's where I really hope that we are able to free people up from those admin tasks, so that it becomes part of the normal way of people managing things. All that repetitive admin stuff is then taken away, so that essentially AI will augment, not erase, the workforce. And the goal would be to have a stronger partnership, so people accept it, people understand that it can handle the drudgery, and they accept that, and it helps them elevate their role within businesses. I think that's the key, I would say, for 2030.
Brilliant. And as a man who has been through a few decades of AI and is living through this kind of golden age of it, what do you think, well, from what you've seen maybe historically, where do you think it will be in 2030?
I feel like echoing those great comments made by the other panelists, I think I've got to say, let's hope that it's helping in a way solve the big problems: climate change, growing inequality, disillusionment with institutions. Let's hope that it solves those problems. But I think that those problems, if we look at the big problems of the world, they're problems that involve more about humanity and its relationships than anything else. They're not technical problems. They're problems about the way the world works together. But I think if AI can play a role in freeing people to realize their potential, not just within our country or within the West, but in the emerging world, that if we can basically have the potential of more people realized, there is nothing of more value than human potential. And we've got, and there's so little of humanity really realizes its potential now because of the way the world works. You think about the global South, you think about women, and how many women are disadvantaged in realizing their potential. How many people, because of various prejudices and tolerances, are not given that. If AI can play a role in helping people realize their potential, I think those other problems, climate change, inequality, disillusionment, those problems will be solved by people. But what AI can do, the things that all the panelists have talked about here in terms of freeing up people to do more, if we can make that happen, then I think, let's hope by 2030, we're looking at a brighter future.
Well, I hope that in 2030 we'll all still be here and able to revisit that, maybe with a few more grey hairs. But who knows? Maybe we'll have our AI buddies with us next to us chatting away. But everyone, I'd really like to thank you for all your input. Thank you for your help to me and my learns over the last 5 years. And I do wish you well in your endeavors. I wish you happy Christmas and a happy New Year. And thank you very much for your time today. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you,
all.
David.
Thank you.
Thanks, panel. It was
No problem.
great.